All right. Let's look at Matthew 25 today. And this is a long chapter. It's actually 3 different parts. I don't know if we're going to, I only prepared 2 today, but I don't even know if we're going to get through one of them, okay? But there's 3 major parts here in Matthew 25. And we're going to focus in on the first one about the kingdom. This is, of course, one that we've all heard of. This is one of the most famous ones. So let's read this together real quick from verse 1. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 bridesmaids, or brides, right? Brides, who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. The 5 who were foolish didn't take enough olive oil for their lamps, but the other 5 were wise enough to take along extra olive oil. When the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, they were roused by the shout, "Look, the bridegroom is coming. Come out and meet him." All the bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. Then the 5 foolish ones asked the others, "Please give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out." But the others replied, "We don't have enough for all of us. Go to a shop and buy some for yourself." But while they were gone to buy oil, the bridegroom came. Then those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was locked. Later, when the other 5 bridesmaids returned, they stood out calling, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he called back, "Believe me, I don't know you. So you too must keep watch, for you do not know the day or hour of my return." Wow. You know, we see an incredible thing now happening. The revolution is really happening in Korea now. This is Kuri Church. Kuri Church is one of the most historic areas in Korea, okay, because this is a place where Father did countless workshops, education, where he led directly himself. Matchings. So many of the matchings were done in Kuri Church. Everybody knows it as the Ilhwa building, is that right? In America, as the Ilhwa building. Okay, but it's in Kuri, so Kuri is like the city name that it's in, but people call it the Ilhwa building. It has like dormitories there, so there you could do workshops there, etc. It was the main training facility, okay, that Father was using in Korea. Okay, so it has a very important history, and of course for the last, I don't know how many months now. How many months was it? Tim, do you know exactly how many months? It's probably in the last couple of months, there's been a forced push to sell this property, right? So the Han mother is really pushing hard to sell this property. So they've gone to this church, and the church member said, no, we can't sell this property. This is a pilgrimage site. It was the main site that Father used. This is like a historic site. We can't just sell it. And so there was a little back and forth, and so it came to the point where she actually called up the higher uppers and the other, prostitutes up there, told the Korean leader to go and talk to them and, basically tell them to, sell it. So it's been like a internal sort of battle for the last couple of months. Okay, and so it's now to the point where they've been ordered and mandated to sell the property, and the church members, as you can see, they have a sign up on that front of the church, which can you read that real quick? Hold on, let me see. It says 참부모님 제2 고향, which means the second homeland or hometown of true parents. 심정에. Okay, it's kind of small. That picture is kind of small. In any case, they're talking about 성지순례 means pilgrimage site. Well, let's maintain it as a holy site, is what they're saying. So the Korean leaders all came down there, the big leaders, whatever, they came down and said, "Oh, you must do this, and you must unite with your mother," and etc., all this kind of thing. And so eventually now, last week, it went to a vote. So they were called in advance, of course, before the vote, and they were ordered, to vote the proper way. They were what is it? Educated first, right? Educated before the vote. And to vote to unite with the direction of true mother because true parents are one, right? It's a propaganda. And last week the vote came out, 101 in favor, 181 rejected. So 183, I'm sorry, 183. So this is now coming directly because they have now got a direct order. They know it's directly from mother. They know it's not through the henchmen and all the little, exploiters and the little, prostitutes. They know it's coming straight from mother, right? Their minister was called and, had a private meeting, etc. Of course, we know this is, of course, happening because Kuri is a place of competition for Chungpyeong, and what they're trying to do is consolidate everything in Chungpyeong, and they're moving all the headquarters and things to Chungpyeong. And of course, you'll be excited to hear about the wonderful new museum project. The members worldwide are going to be so excited about that, is what they believe. The museum to beat all museums. It will be the grandest museum in the world, apparently. And apparently, when you go in there and you come out, you'll be a believer. Okay. So that's how it's going to be huge, I guess, and it's going to be bigger than the Louvre and the Met or whatever. And just to get everybody excited about it, you just get your checkbooks ready. Because here come more taxes for you. Oh, goodness. Such foolishness. Buildings, what I notice about buildings? They're kind of dead. There's not really something living in a building. It is the Spirit of God that animates a place. And when the Spirit of God is not there, all you got is a cold, dead, concrete building. Doesn't matter how big it is. Doesn't matter how fancy it looks. It's still ugly and it's cold and it's dead. Right? So you can see now there is open rebellion now against the orders of the Han Mother, and people now are awakening to the reality that she is totally going against Father, in fact, erasing his legacy. What we've been saying, even though we've been slandered and accused and attacked for telling the truth and not embezzling and stealing money, and our crime is using the tongue mark, which Father gave to me. That's my crime. My crime is I don't have extramarital sex, and I don't commit adultery, and I didn't embezzle money, and I didn't steal, and I want to exploit the members. That's my crime. My crime is I wear a tongue mark. Get that thing off his neck. That's my crime. Right? So this is the insanity of where we're at, okay? And you see this in the same, it's very interesting because this is also mirrored in the macrocosm. Look at this with Trump, and this is the most sensational political campaign like in the history of modern politics, seriously. Even Korea, we're watching Korean news, and Korean news is going bazooka bunkers about Trump. I mean, they at first they hate him, and now they're saying, shoot, he may become the president. We better change our rhetoric. And now some of them are speaking a little nicer about Trump. And remember, we invited Dr. Richard Gage, who was the expert on the 9/11 towers. Remember, we invited her? Everybody calls conspiracy theories, you're crazy. Oh, they got this and that. No, see, we want to see evidence. We have open minds. We want to see and investigate reality. Trump then, in his actual presidential campaign, brings it out. He says, what you've heard from the government is not real. There's a Saudi connection. And just last week, the Senate votes that American citizens can sue Saudi Arabia, which is unbelievable because it's like that goes against everybody's narrative that you've heard the last 15 years. All you've heard is, Iraq did it, Iraq did it, Iraq did it, Iraq did it, Iraq did it. That's all you heard, right? What's happened now with Saudi Arabia? Now the Senate, the U.S. Senate, has voted American citizens can sue Saudi Arabian government. And in response to that, the Saudis come out publicly and they say, well, if you sue us, we are going to, basically, fight in court. And we were told to do it by your government. So now the Saudis are saying that the American government was involved in it. The Saudis are saying that. This is outrageous because it now shatters the CNN propaganda narrative and all these mainstream outlets that people were so bamboozled about. They thought, oh, I'm so smart. They're so crazy conspiracy theorists. Oh, I'm so smart. I listen to CNN and Anderson Cooper said it's not true. That's the level of their investigative ability. And now the reality is starting to hit in, and the American people are starting to realize, whoa, what the government was saying was not true. There's a different story here that's now coming out. And this is like, who would have ever expected this happening on the campaign trail? It's unbelievable, because what even Americans understand about their own country is radically transforming. Like now they have to actually look and say, wait a minute, this centralized government is a serious issue, right? They not only stole votes, they not only stole cities away from millions of people in Colorado, for example, got disenfranchised. Remember when Trump had a rally there? They canceled the whole event. Remember this? Millions of people. So you're talking about thousands of black people, thousands of Hispanic people, thousands of white people. Thousands of people were disenfranchised in just a couple months ago, right? And so you can see the establishment, how corrupt it is, how unbelievably corrupt it is, but trying to maintain this narrative. No, we're good. Keep, sending your taxes in. It's exactly the same as family fraud. Trying to maintain that same false narrative, which is not true. No, we're good. We're going to make a beautiful museum. Send your money. Come on. Oh, no, nothing's wrong. No problem here. This is the situation. And you can see the micro and macrocosms literally parallel. Wasn't it so weird? Like a year ago, we were talking about all these different issues, GMOs, and we were talking about all these different issues, right? And 9/11 or this or that, or centralized government. And then all of a sudden, you have a presidential campaign, a presidential candidate who's literally, he's on InfoWars, which the left sees as the main propaganda, conspiracy theorist webpage, even though they're probably the only ones who do real journalism and tell the truth, and of course they're Christian-based. And so you have this unbelievable reality happening during a presidential campaign. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Super unexpected. Right? And Donald Trump doesn't play by the rules. He just tells it how he is. He comes out strong, and they call him, they try to use, oh, he's racist or he's misogynist, blah, blah, blah. No, he's not. And the more he goes, the more clear it is he's not. So we see this incredible battle happening on the political arena. We still have far ways to go. But of course, we know that almost at every rally, there's these paid provocateurs who, incite riots and beat up people. And, you see this almost at every single rally. But there's a real clash of civilizations in America now. And we're not in the same situation as we were when we had Reagan or we had, John F. Kennedy. We're not in those same situations because our economy is tanked. It's bankrupt. We are $20 trillion in debt. This is not the same situation. We are in tremendous debt. We are so economically weak. Right? So we know, of course, people are getting excited, and there's a whole grassroots movement that's rising up to support the able type figure, Trump. Remember when we were saying Trump, we were talking about Trump, and we were saying, oh, Trump is bad, remember this? Remember this? Now he's the Republican front runner. He's destroyed everybody. He's defeated all 16. Now he's the front runner. Remember this? He's dominated them all. And he's done it by telling the truth. He's brought out issues that nobody has been touching, right? Especially the establishment. They've been trying to cover it up. So you see this kind of parallel of the Abel-type revolution happening, because we have to remember the Abel-type revolution is different from the Cain-type revolution, because Cain-type revolutions, if they just start from the ground up, it's not enough. It always leads to socialism, communism. They get taken over and hijacked. It has to be with the elites have to split. So we saw this with the founding fathers in America. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all these guys, they were elites in Britain. George Washington was estimated current monetary worth about $500 million. He was basically a billionaire, right? And so he split from the elites. He said, we're not going to go along with you. He was an able-type elite who said, we're not going to go along with you to create this system of control over all nations. We don't want that. We want people to be free. We want people to live free, just as God give that grace to us. And so they rebelled, and they actually ended up in a war. I mean, this was a real war, right? You understand, right? They don't teach that anymore, but they had to fight. They had to fight for their lives. You know, if you met George Washington, he was a man's man. He was a tough dude, man. You can't mess with George Washington. He's a tough guy. He was tall, too. I heard he was like 6'3" or something, 6'2". So the guy was big, and he was no pushover, right? He had a golden wig or whatever he was wearing, that thing, but he was a tough guy, and he's righteous. He was able-type. He stood up against the whole establishment of Europe. Isn't that interesting? So you have to have, in the elite coterie, you have to have a break-off. There has to be a break-off of good and evil in the elites. Then you can have the grassroots population unite with that central position, and then fight an able-type war, whether it's ideological or what have you. In the case of Revolutionary War, it became actually confrontational, but it became one that ended in the growth stage perfection level. Right? The third stage of the growth level. So in the most freedom that the world has ever seen. The most control of the archangel the world has ever seen. And America was truly a different place. It was the place that was prepared for Father to come use as Rome to minister to the world. Okay? So this kind of parallel, it's like exactly the same. Right? It's exactly the same. I remember when we were breaking the silence and things like this, people knew what the Han Mother was doing was wrong, but they couldn't step forward, especially in Asia. They couldn't step forward. It's like we have nothing to stand around. And there was this big internal battle in my own self eventually when I knew I had to do it, and I felt the Spirit so strong I had to go and step forward. Then once we broke the silence and we started telling the truth and speak boldly and speak strong and speak challenging and speak true, then people could gather around that. And then also the different churches around the world could gather around that. Right? So in the same way, the American Revolution, also the internal revolution against the desecration of Christ in the center of Providence, here, the microcosm. And then now externally, you see a same type of rebellion going against the globe, what they call the globalists or the world government folks, the world government people who want the world government, decentralized power, world socialism essentially, which they will be able to control. They'll sit on the top of it all, right? These kind of people. You know, so we are in definitely serious times. Since we know that it is in the time of tribulation where all the, whether it's in the book of Revelation, the four horsemen, or the different, apocalyptic scenarios arise, we have serious issues, serious clashes of civilizations coming. Serious clashes, right? Just last week, if you saw last week's sermon, you saw the NATO former deputy director saying publicly, it looks very, very clear, 2017, we could have potential tactical nuclear war with Russia. And of course, we know the world government folks want to blow it up because they want to get out of the target zone. They know what they've created is such fraud. They know they've robbed all the nations. They know they've imploded the economies to enrich themselves. They know that, and the people are starting to wake up to that. So in order to get out of that reality, now the spotlight's being turned on them. Say, hey, wait a minute, they're the problem makers. How do you get rid of that? How do you get out of that situation? Well, they start the wars. And as they start the wars, they can keep people busy fighting each other or fighting between, Trump supporters and non-Trump supporters, or fighting between each other. Get them into wars, get them into nations that will fight each other, get the spotlight off of the financiers. Right, so we are in a serious time of economic collapse worldwide. All right, so it's important to be able to see the reality and to, even though it's uncomfortable, to be able to digest it and to be able to, make appropriate spiritual preparations, make appropriate physical preparations, make appropriate, have talks with your family, etc. Work on your relationships with God, horizontal relationship with your family. This is the time. This is the time. So we know, of course, when we look at the kingdom and the bridegroom and the bride's parable, we know, of course, on the microcosmic level, we know that the Messiah comes as the bridegroom. And he gives the blessing. The blessing is the blessing that God wanted to give from the beginning of time. Okay? To Adam and Eve, he wanted to give this blessing, which is the blessing of marriage, the holy blessing. And we know providential history has been waiting for that time where the Lord could give the providential, the blessing, covenant, which he purposed from the beginning. However, we know the fall, and we know Adam and Eve had strayed. So on the microcosmic level, we know the power of the blessing. We know the bridegroom comes, and he will establish the lineage. He will gather the brides. And, of course, we know the value of the 3-day ceremony, okay? The 3-day ceremony and the holy marriage blessing is the turning point from us to receive freedom from Satan. Remember, freedom is not only freedom to something, it's many times freedom from something. And when, even in the Revolutionary War, the Founding Fathers fought for freedom from government, not freedom just to do whatever they want. They wanted to be free from intrusion from these powers above. They want to be free from this. And it's the same thing when we look at it from the spiritual level, when we receive the holy blessing and go through the 3-day ceremony. It is the freedom that we receive from Satan. Satan has no more claim on us. And on our what? Seed. No more claim on the seed. Right? So since we know that the Lord will come, Jesus will come and bring the seed, what is called in the Bible the spermata, which will bring the lineage of God. And since Satan knows this, he's always been trying to destroy the seed. He's been always trying to relativize the seed. Oh, seed's not really that important. Oh, seed's nasty. Seed's not, it's a small little thing. The egg's way bigger, and it's all this thing. Make it into a gender war. Because he knows the seed of God is what's necessary. The seed has to come. The seed has to come, God's seed has to come in the flesh for the earthly kingdom to be constructed, to be built. Okay? So that's critical. That is what the principle talks about as physical salvation. Central. So the bridegroom comes and the blessing of marriage and the 3-day ceremony. How important. Can you believe the family fraud is not even teaching the 3-day ceremony? What a traitorous action. I mean, this is the ceremony that Father created, all right, to allow all the brides to become one with him and to let all his sons become his body. Okay? This is the central separation from Satan. At the core of it all, right? At the core of it all. At the union of man and woman. This is the core and the beginning of civilization, beginning of generations, beginning of descendants, beginning of everything. Right? And they're not even teaching that anymore. That's how much they have departed, erased Father and his tradition. Right? The 3-day ceremony, when we truly understand it, it is the greatest gift. It separates us from the history of evil sex. Evil sex. Do you understand? The history of evil sexual domination, rape, pedophilia, homosexuality, bestiality, all this, adultery, all that. It separates us from the father of that. It completely, we are reborn into a new kingdom. Right? Where the husband is now a son of God. He is the body of Christ, living on the earth. Right? He's a body. And of course, the body has to be obedient to the head, which is Christ, right? And the wife, the bride, comes into her full providential role from the ideal of creation, Eve to be the bride of God. You see how important the 3-day ceremony is? So important. It's so transformational. It is the marking point between freedom and slavery. Freedom from Satan and being a slave to Satan. It is so critical. And of course, so we know that the bridegroom comes as the Messiah must come as the bridegroom. One of his 3 characteristics. Bridegroom, judger of evil, okay? And Father did that. He was the great judge of evil communism and centralized power. He was the great judge of it. And the kingdom, the kingship. Okay? So now when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, now we're looking at the kingdom level, the national level. Also, think about this. The bridegroom on the national level is what? It's obviously the nation of the bridegroom, right? Christ. It's the nation that comes from Christ. So comes from his kingship, comes and establishes Chanilguk. When Chanilguk is established, it becomes, and that peoples accept the Chanilguk Constitution. Central to that Constitution is the proclamation of God. Is central to that Constitution is the proclamation of true Father as the returning Lord of the Second Advent. Central to that proclamation is that this one man will change history. This one seed will transform history. And now will create a totally different reality wherein which humanity will reside. That is antithesis, opposite, anathema to Satan's history and perpetual cycles of oligarchy and communism, socialism, same boring stuff over and over again. Tyranny, all those things. So from a perspective of a nation, the bridegroom nation is the nation of Chanilguk. It's the nation of Chanilguk. Now we know that look at this. It says the bridegroom was delayed. Isn't that prophetic? Isn't that incredible? It says the bridegroom was delayed. We know we are now in the 3-generational kingship. Just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the promise was given to Abraham, but it was not fulfilled till 3 generations later in the line of Jacob. The promise was given to Adam, right? The first Adam, then the second Adam, Jesus, but it's not going to be fulfilled until the second coming of Jesus, which is what? The third Adam. The third king comes, right? And in the same way, we're also in this transitional period because of the failure of the Hun mother. There is personal responsibility in this, as you can see. And as people are now becoming more aware that we could not stay in the palace and not desecrate Father. It was impossible. Right? I give the example frequently of you cannot practice fidelity in marriage and at the same time practice adultery in marriage. They're mutually exclusive. Right? The fools that think they can, I'm faithful to my wife, but I'm faithful to adultery. You a liar and a prostitute. You can't do it. It's one or the other. It's mutually exclusive. And so in the same way, when we are there, now from what everybody can see now publicly she's saying, they can understand why we had to separate. We had to step away from the power. We had to step away from the direction they were going. Because why? It would 100% lead to desecration, which we warned them, which we told them it would. And of course would lead to the judgment coming. The kingdom not coming through blessing and the victory of true parents, which it could have, if she stayed in her role as object and lifted up Father and then lifted up his kingship, it would have came. Think about how much the foundation Father had. We would be standing with Trump. We would be doing all those. We would just, worldwide, it would be so powerful. Kukjong was already talking with the top leaders in Asia, already talking to them about the fact that they have to watch out for China's encroachment. This was 6 plus, well, no, now, what is it? What is it now? Almost 9 years ago now? Is that 6 years? 6 years ago? 6 years ago? 6, 7 years now? So it would have been a totally different scenario. However, because of that central figure at the highest providential level, then, as Father said, it becomes, the kingdom will come because the victory of Adam has been established, the kingship and the seed has been established, but it will come now through tribulation. So there is a delay. There is a delay. But it comes through the judgment period, and during the judgment period, there are many tests that come, right? Through the judgment period, there's all sorts of things that will come to pull us away from Christ, that will pull us to, the Bible talks about it as take the mark of the beast, take Satan's mark, right? Take the archangel's mark, become his child, right? And those who take that, the mark of the archangel are prohibited from entering the kingdom, right? So the bridegroom is delayed, but at the national level, think about it. Nationally now, Chaniguk is delayed. It's delayed. It has to now move through the judgment period, through the 3 generational kingships. Right? We talk about how we're the Isaac generation, ready to go on the altar. One brother said, but God spared Isaac in the end. We can't expect that. Isaac went with the full motivation of, I will be obedient and I will die if I have to. Right? We will go, the Isaac generation has to be willing to stand for truth, even though it's uncomfortable, and even though we may lose our lives. That's what's required for the kingdom to come. So on the national level, we have, in the future, we have when the bridegroom is past his delay, and now the bridegroom nation has come, and the nation of Chaniguk has begun. Woo! The nation of Chaniguk has begun. In that time, well, there will be bridesmaids. There will be brides. Remember, Chaniguk allows contracts of relationship with different nations, foreign policy, etc., all that exists. But also, other nations can join Chaniguk. But notice how when they join Chaniguk, they have to become part of Chaniguk. They have to become part of the Republican Libertarian monarchy. Okay? They can't come in as a communist nation. They can't even come in as a democratic nation. Because a democratic nation, we know through history, always becomes oligarchy. It's the fickle nature of the masses that can be easily manipulated by smooth-talking politicians that promise free things for votes and money, right? So democracies always collapse into tyrannies, always. No case where it lasts more than a couple of 100 years. Not even America's case, right? So the actual kingdom must come, but look at this. Just like the world in the microcosmic level, the central providential purpose, waiting for the seed of God, so too is that at the national level, the nations also, by coming into relationship with Chaniguk, the bridegroom country, will also come into contact with his seed. Right? There is a kingship there from which a seed has been released at the national level, which is what? The Chaniguk Constitution. It is the Constitution. It is the core which will create the whole identity, which create the whole nature of that nation. Does that make sense? It's like a seed. Okay? So, and in the intimate relationship, when a nation now is saying, oh, we want to be part of Chaniguk, they adopt the Chaniguk Constitution. They bring the constitution of Chaniguk. They bring in the seed on the national level of Chaniguk. Now, of course, there's freedom of religion. That doesn't mean everybody has to receive the blessing. It's mandated, it's forced. No. But there is a kingship there that represents the bloodline of Christ, and that administers the blessing if you want it. Does that make sense? It's not separate from the nature of Chaniguk, which has a God-centered starting point. It's not a secular country. Does that make sense? Central to the identity of that nation is its relationship to God, Christ, and the kingship he has created, the covenant that has been given. It is not a secular place. Although you have freedom of religion, you don't have to believe in religion, but the nature of that country, the culture of that country, is based on that God-centered purpose. Does that make sense? Just like you can live in Italy, but the Vatican, or in Vatican City, you may live there. You may. Do you have to be a Catholic to live in? No, you have to be. Okay, so like in Britain, they have the Anglican Church. The Queen is the head of the Anglican Church, but not everybody is forced to be an Anglican. Does that make sense? But the culture is Anglican, before the invasions of Europe now, right? Where now it's becoming more and more Wahhabi-style, radical, Saudi-backed Islam. Okay? So Chaniguk has that culture. It's a Judeo-Christian culture. It is a God-centered culture, and it is a culture that acknowledges Reverend Sun Myung Moon as a returning Christ who has established the kingdom that this world has never seen. That is totally upside down kingdom, where the covenant of God has been given to the citizens, where the citizens are also co-heirs. They have the rights of kings. And the servants, right? The servants may not, it is prohibited, may not rule over the kings. You see what I mean? By law, the archangel is chained. And of course, there is no democratic process. Yes, no democratic process for amendments. So, the new generations that get sucked up into archangelic philosophy and or Marxism and or communism and get sold into by different corporations into those things, they cannot change the law and destroy the country. Does that make sense? They can't. They may start violent revolutions, but that's why the peace police and peace militia, where everybody is part of, are there. And we will deal with them on the local level. Right? But they are not allowed to be, even if they're brainwashed, to change the law and destroy the country, which is, of course, what has happened in America. So there will be many brides that are there, but they must be ready to meet him. They must be ready for that nation that comes. It's interesting, the light of a nation. When you think about a nation, you think about the light. Even sociological surveys have done in countries that have more freedom, there are actually physically more lights in that country at night. You can actually see more lights from satellite pictures. Countries that have no freedom, and basically where they have centralized powers, very low light in satellite pictures. But if you look at, developed countries that have more freedom generally than other places, communist places, at nighttime you see they're much more alive. There's a greater light, right? I'm not saying what happens in all those cities is great and that's light. No, there's a lot of sin going on in the cities. But there's a symbol of that nation having a light or having being a prosperous place of opportunity. A place where people can go and come out of the darkness, come out of difficulty, and reach a new opportunity. But it's interesting, all the light of nations is fueled by something. It's fueled by something. And we can say it's fueled by this or that, or it's fueled by, this grid or that grid. But really, it's fueled by freedom and responsibility. If you think about it, in terms of its core, what produces real prosperity and success in the world, in terms of nations, it's freedom and responsibility. When the people are able to be free and have responsibility for their actions, where they don't have a big daddy government pretending to be their daddy, eventually making them farmed animals, right? Using the farming system on people, where they become part of the produce. And that's what the banker system is. That's what the world government system is. That's what the UN system is. It is the model of farming, but now using people, right? Farm them, make them work, steal their resource, steal their tax money, tax them, forcibly tax them, steal what they made, say it's for them, say it's for their security. It's a farming model. You're farming livestock. Okay, this is not how God's people are supposed to live. We're not supposed to be livestock. Amen? Amen. We're supposed to be free children of God who rule and have dominion over creation. Co-heirs with Christ. That means we have dominion over kingdoms too. Does that make sense? In Chaniguk, that is by law protected. Okay? So there are many nations that may want to come into that relationship with the bridegroom. There are many who may notice that all the brides wanted to have relationship with the bridegroom. All of them want to get into the marriage feast. All of them want to get in. But if they didn't bring the oil, the fuel for the light, the fuel for that prosperity of that nation, which is what? God's given grace, freedom, responsibility. If they don't allow that for those nations, they cannot join Chaniguk. They cannot. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. They will say, Lord, Lord, I want to get into that marriage feast. And the Lord said, I don't know you. I don't know you, nation. You cannot come into Chaniguk as a communist nation, as a socialist nation. It's not possible, right? So there are many that want to enter, have the seed of the bridegroom, receive the seed of the constitution of the nation. But there are those, if they are not able to be ready, they cannot receive it when it comes. Jesus then goes on, right after this, he goes on again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by a story of a man going on a long-distance trip. He called together his servants and entrusted them the money when he was gone. Remember this? So he gives 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to the other, and 1 bag of silver to the last. Remember this one? They actually say, 1 denarii, 5 denarii. 5 talents, 2 talents, and 1 talent in the King James Version. Okay, but the reason why they wrote a bag of silver, because people don't realize 1 talent equals like 6,000 denarii. And a denarii is like a wage that you get for 1 day of work. So it's a huge amount of money, right? It's like 6,000 days of work in 1 talent. So that's why the Living Translation said it like bags of gold, because then people can notice, oh, that's kind of precious. So he didn't just give them like a penny, right? He gave them quite a bit of resources, okay? So we know that on the microcosm level, when we see this one, and of course you know the story, the one that the master goes on the trip, he comes back, and the guy that was given 5 bags makes another 5 bags. So he had 5, now he has 10 bags of silver. And the master is so happy. Look at the master. He's like, wow, he's so happy. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. And then there's the guy who received 2 bags. And it's the same thing. Jesus says, the master says the same thing. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling small amount. So now I will give you more responsibility. Let's celebrate together. That's the guy who had 2 bags of silver. And then he made 2 more. Right? So he doubled it. But then there's the one guy who said to his master, he said, oh, I knew you were wicked and you were, I'm sorry. I knew you were a harsh man. And so what I did, I was afraid I would lose your money, so I just hid it in the earth. And look, here's your money back. And then what does the master say? He said, you wicked and lazy servant. Etc. Take the money from the servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who will use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay. So, of course, we've seen this, and we can see this on the personal level, which is the usual interpretation of Christianity, is to look at this and say, when God gives you a gift and He gives you a talent, make sure you reproduce that talent and bless other people with it. Don't just keep it for yourself. Don't just hide it. And, this is the conventional explanation. Right? How many heard this explanation? Right? Okay. So that's the conventional explanation. But when we look at the context of the kingdom of God, which Jesus was talking about, again, the kingdom of heaven is, so we're looking now in the context of the kingdom. Well, now, remember, who were the servants in the kingdom, the upside-down kingdom? The politicians, the public servants are the servants. See, it's so hard for us to get this because we live in satanic world. So we're acculturated to Satan's culture. But it's very obvious to people who live in the kingdom, no, of course, those guys are our servants, of course. It's just normal. Just how we think it's normal that we have to grovel to politicians or whatever, Especially if you come from Asia, my gosh, it's 100 times worse than in America, right? So you have now the servants are there, okay? Now on the national level, remember, there is a legitimate role for government in Chaniguk. It is limited, though. It cannot, by law, exceed 10% of GDP, okay? And there are legitimate roles for Congress, for example, creating anti-monopoly laws. That is one of their powers, right? Continually creating laws that break up monopolies, okay? Another legitimate role of government is to organize a military in times of external attack. So when a nation is invaded by foreign powers, well, it's the role of the smaller government to organize the different militias to become one army to fight against. Of course, in the Chaniguk Constitution, there are direct prohibitions after war, and when war powers cease, also the different powers of the government which cease. Those are explicitly mentioned in the Chaniguk Constitution. Okay, so remember, in Chaniguk too, there are politicians. There are local politicians too. There are House representatives that are voted from every 2,100 people. Okay? So there are politicians. Being a politician is a legitimate role, okay, in Chaniguk, in the society, to be a public servant. However, you really have to be a servant in order to be successful at that role as well. Just like if you're an entrepreneur and you're a producer, like here too, of course, we can see this in the terms of Chaniguk as a producer-based economy and nation, that it is so free that you're able to produce things for other people without intrusion and regulation. So you can really serve other people and live out your biblical principles in daily life while making money for yourself and your family. It's a total win-win, right? But at the same time, for the politicians too, they are under that same healthy pressure. Those servants must produce for the master. And remember, who are the kings and the master in Chaniguk? It's the citizens. It's upside down. Does that make sense? It's upside down. So they must produce for the citizens. So look, we have one district where the politician and the public servant produces 5 times more value for his master, for his people. Maybe he brings in new businesses into that area. Maybe he uses his network to bring in jobs and new economies to develop in there. Now the people can have a lot more opportunities. So that kind of politician can be blessed. He can succeed, right? Even if you're given 2 bags of silver, right? then the politician still, as long as he's able to produce for his master, can continue on. But look, the one that does not produce, he didn't actually take the money and like lose it all and squander it all. He actually just hid it. But the ones who don't produce for their master, for the local citizens and the kings of Chanigu, look, what they have will be taken away and they will be thrown out. Does that make sense? See, the servants are beholden to the master. That's what's very clear in this parable. But in the upside-down kingdom, the public servants, who are the politicians, they are beholden to the master. They are beholden to the citizens. The citizens have the power, obviously, to give them the boot. Even take what they had in terms of their political career and give it to somebody else that they feel is more viable. See? They have the true powers of kings in Chanigu. See, from the national level, then we can see in the context of Chanigu how the nation is operating, how it runs. And the reason why it will create the most prosperity, freedom, and responsibility. Because think about it, a nation that works like this has to be moral. You may not go to church every week, and you may not do these religious ceremonies every week, or be part of an organized religion, but you have to be moral in a free and responsible place. You have to. If you're going to do business with somebody, you have to keep your promise. You have to abide by keeping that promise. You can't cheat somebody. You can't steal from somebody. If you're going to do business, and your reputation is going to get soiled and soured and destroyed. Right? Your reputation is everything. Try doing business on Amazon or eBay and steal from people. They're going to rat you out real quick. Right? That's like a free internet economy. But that will happen in the real world too. So by having the Chanigu Constitution in place, the seed on the national level come into place in that nation, by natural processes, the nation becomes obedient to the Ten Commandments. Does that make sense? Without actually having to say, did you follow Commandment 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5? Naturally, they follow the Ten Commandments. You don't steal from people. You don't cheat people. You don't, covet your neighbor's wife. You don't do these things. That will destroy your relationships. It will destroy your ability to do business and to help people and to work and to have opportunity. Even by naturally, you will follow the Ten Commandments of God. Isn't that interesting? A nation that does not have that, where you can determine your own gender and your own sex, and you can pretend you're this or that, and today I'm fairy queen, and today I'm not fairy queen, today I'm man, and today I'm woman. In this kind of crazy land, you have no rights. You just have your own little pretend, superhero world. Your own little delusion. Right? In that kind of land, you can act however the heck you want. You can act like a crazy fool. And if anybody says, wait a minute, that person's a little weird. He's a 40-year-old man dressing up in women's clothing, coming into, into workplace. That's kind of weird, Oh, you discriminated against me. I'm going to ban you. Right? This is how insane it becomes. So real morals are not fostered. You're not really watching you're not following the Ten Commandments. You're lying to yourself constantly because you have a set of testicles and you have a penis and you're trying to pretend you're a woman. That's constant self-deception, right? That's biological self-deception, right? So that promotes a culture of disobeying the Ten Commandments, being dishonest. First of all, be dishonest with yourself. Lie to yourself. You make your own reality. If you kill somebody, well, if you really love yourself, you really didn't kill that person. He deserved it, and he fell onto the knife. It becomes total delusion. Relativist delusion with no reality, right? Oh, no, you sleep around and you have millions of, sexual diseases and you give people, but you got to love yourself. You have to love yourself. Okay? There's no consequences to behavior. What world do you live in? This is delusion. This is a nation with no freedom and no responsibility. No reality check. Okay? In that kind of culture, what happens? Immorality cycles, perpetuates. Breaking the Ten Commandments perpetuates. So you have a culture which actually goes further and further from God as they try to pretend they're more creative and do more eccentric things, which are so not new. They're totally ancient and Babylonian and Assyrian. They're totally old. All this bisexual, all this transgender stuff, all this homosexual stuff, boring, it's old. It's not new. Boo, 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 boring. Old. We know all that always leads to pedophilia in the end anyway, because that's what the elites love to do. So it's boring, boring, boring. We know where you're going. You don't fool us. What is new is beautiful husbands and beautiful wives with strong families, with morals, who behave well and have powerful children, who are empowered and not slaves. That's beautiful. That is what humanity is meant to be. And the totalitarians hate that. When you walk down with your gorgeous wife, and you're a man, and you're a man, you're not scared to be a man, you embrace your masculinity, and you have beautiful children who are not afraid to be children to their parents, and not afraid to be men and women, these totalitarians hate that. They want you to be sick. They want you to be on antibiotics. They want you to be on medication. They want you to have 50 psychological syndromes which they've labeled you with, so you have no mental strength. They want you to be weak and decrepit and handicapped so they can dominate you. That's what they want. They don't want strong people. They don't want strong people who are connected to God, who have a sense of purpose, destiny, who have a sense of connection to the Creator, who will not sit and lay down when the devil says, come and take it. We say, no. How about we knock you out? Right? This is what they hate. Hate that. So when people are real people, when men are real men, when women are real women, and when children and families have power, they hate that. Hate it. Okay? So in Chaniguk, in Chaniguk, the public servants are just that. They are the servants. And it is illegal for them to change the law. Illegal to change the Constitution. There's no amendment process. Too bad. Too bad, socialist, communist, globalist, UN, and world government folks. Right? This country you cannot destroy. That's why it's the country of the kingship of Christ, the millennial kingdom, the perfection stage kingdom, which will not collapse because of the evil systems of centralized power. Whether they be socialism, communism, oligarchy, totalitarianism, you name it, boring, we know what it is. We see you, devil. We know your system. We know your tactics. And God has come back to the earth. He's returned. He's brought his seed. He's established a kingship. He has stood as a bridegroom. And the kingdom has been established and is coming. Is coming. So the devil better flee. All right, let's end, folks, on 29. However, Adam and Eve strayed from that path of uniting with God. Had they not done so, they would have united into one completely, and God would never have been able to leave them. Nor would Adam and Eve ever have been able to leave God. Consequently, their descendants would have been connected, generation after generation, forming a tribe, people, nation, and the world. This world would then be a world of grace, the kingdom of heaven on earth. That is from the seed of the Constitution. All right, folks, let's all rise.